Jeremy Crow, and tonight we're going to be talking about a Gnostic and alchemical interpretation of the Passion of Christ, the crucifixion story of Jesus. And if you aren't familiar with Gnosticism, it is an alternative interpretation of the Judeo Christian mythology in which the main god that is spoken of in most of the scriptures, especially Old Testament, is considered to be the demiurge. And this is a flawed creator. And that creator intends to keep people ignorant in order to keep them under control. And this explains why God didn't want Adam and Eve to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil and other things like that, and all of the atrocities that were committed or ordered to be committed by the God, especially the God of the Old Testament. And alchemy is an ancient form of, you could say, science, an art and science of transmutation. Transmutation typically is spoken of as the transmutation of base metals such as lead into more refined metals such as gold in particular. And often that is also used as an analogy for an internal transformation, whereas lead is corruptible, it is able to corrode and that sort of thing, whereas gold does not rust or corrode and is a symbol of immortality or at least of incorruptibility. And we also see in more Eastern forms of alchemy, such as Taoist internal alchemy, that it is an internal process of typically of energy work where one refines the energies of one's own body or bodies, not just the physical body, but the energetic bodies that we have in order to produce an immortal vehicle of consciousness. In Western terms, this is often referred to as the body of light. There's many, many terms for it, but in Taoism, they refer to it as immortality. And in Buddhism, they refer to it often as the diamond body or sometimes the rainbow body, which is more of a sign of attainment, of having achieved a certain level of progress in that internal alchemy. Jung, Carl Gustav Jung, was also not only an alchemist in terms of his ideology, but also a Gnostic. And he wrote several Gnostic texts, including the Seven Sermons of the Dead. And he was also a vivid dreamer. It's unsure whether he was a lucid dreamer or not, but he kept a very detailed dream journal, which included artwork that he produced for his dream journal, which was extremely vivid and evocative. Very cool book called The Red Book, which you can get copies of some of the material from his dream journals. Now, we're going to get into this a little bit deeper, but one of the things that I like to do when I first start my live streams is to start off with a bit of a divination. After kind of explaining what I'm going to cover in the video, I like to get a bit of a divination where we can get a bit of guidance or a little bit of wisdom from that. And one of my favorites to use, especially for this purpose, is the I Ching. And I like to use the copy of the I Ching that was produced by Benabel Wen. And she's also a YouTuber. And encourage you to check out her channel. She has a lot of really interesting information on her channel. About Western occultism, but mostly, or where she really shines, is in esoteric Taoism. She has some really interesting insights into that. And all of her content is great, but I particularly enjoy her esoteric Taoist content. And so instead of doing a full I Ching reading with like coins or yarrow stocks or whatever, I like to do a bibliomancy version of it where I just open it at a random page and then pick whatever hexagram we happen to land on and read the oracle portion of that and see what we get. Let's just see what we get. Okay, we ended up getting hexagram 21, which is called Bite Through. I don't think we've gotten this one yet. I'll show it to you. All right. Okay, so this one is the fire trigram over top of the thunder trigram to form the hexagram. A hexagram in the I Ching is a stack of 6 lines. Each line is either broken or unbroken. A broken one is yin, and an unbroken one is yang. And so a stack of 3 creates a trigram, and there are 8 trigrams. And if you combine them, you get the hexagram. So 64 hexagrams of the I Ching. And like I said, this one is hexagram 21. It is the thunder trigram below and the fire trigram above. Fire over thunder. And so let's see what we have here for the oracle. I see Ruth just commented here. Hey, Ruth, thanks for stopping by. Okay, what we have here, the oracle states a vulnerable position, outranked and overpowered. Circumstances are favorable for issuing punishment where punishment is due. Adjudicate with impartiality, and then let the punishment fit the crime. Yet in the process of penalizing another, you inflict harm upon yourself. A difficult choice, a Pyrrhic victory. If you cannot be settled until the law has been invoked, then invoke the law. Remember that there are many codes of law in this universe. Administer justice, sign of the sacrifice. Very enigmatic. Interesting. Does that ring true, or does that resonate with anyone in your current situation right now? Whether you're here live or if you happen to cross this video after the fact and watching it whenever you happen to find it. Does this ring true to you? Leave a comment either in the live chat if you're here live, or in the comments section if you're not watching this live. Did that ring true to you, or did that resonate with you in some way? Very interesting. Bite through. It's quite the evocative name as well. All right. So let's get into the topic at hand tonight. Let's dig into it. So, when I'm just gonna get right to the meat of it, and then we can discuss it if you like, or we can go into some further depth with it. So, the idea here that I wanted to share is the concept that in the scriptures, or in the gospels in particular, of the New Testament, we see the story of Jesus Christ's life. And in those stories, one of the things that come up is when Jesus is in the desert. He goes on a 40-day fast in the desert and is tempted by Satan. Satan comes to him and starts tempting him to use his powers for, um, well, for one thing, to break his fast, even though he had made a commitment to fast for a certain number of days, for 40 days, to go ahead and just eat, to break that commitment, and to use his powers to transmute a stone into a loaf of bread and eat it, which he, resists the temptation. Um, Other temptations as well that were in there, the temptations that Satan dangled. Yeah, right after his baptism by John the Baptist, as Ruth mentioned in the comments. He goes into the desert, and Satan comes to him and tempts him with power as well. And another one is having him test that an angel will come save him if he flings himself off of a cliff or something like that. And another one is he tempts him with power and says, if you'll worship me, then you could be very powerful. Now, what if this is the concept that I want to explore, and it relates back to Carl Jung, and it's the idea that Satan represents Jesus's psychological shadow in the New Testament stories. Satan plays a different role in the Old Testament, but what I'm talking about is Satan's role in the New Testament stories. And let's interpret that from the perspective that Satan and Jesus are not two separate characters, that Satan is the psychological shadow of Jesus. So when Satan comes and tempts Jesus, he's alone in the desert. It's his own intrusive thoughts that are tempting him. And it's a part of himself that is saying, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And he maintains his willpower in the face of temptation. But it's not some external entity that is tempting him. It's himself. It's a part of himself. Now, fast forward to the passion, the crucifixion of Christ, where he has to pick up the cross and bring it to Golgotha, which um, the literal meaning of Golgotha is the place of the skull. So we can interpret some esoteric meaning in that as well. Um, Jesus is 33 years old at the time, and there are 33 vertebrae in the human spine. And so we can think of this as this journey up the spine, the serpent energy going up the spine to the point of the skull, at which point he experiences this transformation on the cross. We got a couple more comments here. Zinx Skibidi says, "What's up? Shout out to Prometheus." Yeah, Prometheus, good one. Prometheus is probably one of the most pure examples of the light bearer archetype out there. Um, Definitely a Luciferian character, and absolutely a very cool character in mythology. Occult Prepper, hi everyone. Hey, how's it going? Zinc also said, I like that Gnostic perspective. It was his own desires. Yeah. Now, um, Jesus Christ ends up at Golgotha, and he is suspended above the earth on the cross. He is nailed to the cross, his physical body. And during that point, when he's on the cross, um, I'll get to that question in a bit if I have a chance. When he's on the cross, at one point, he has this very famous line. He cries out, uh, "Why, oh, why have you forsaken me? Oh God, why, oh, why have you forsaken me?" And if you understand the idea of the holy guardian angel in esoteric belief, in the Western esoteric tradition in particular, which comes from the book of, well, in the modern form, the way that it's modern, interpreted in modern occult circles. If you look at the book of the sacred magic of Abramelin the Mage, you'll find the idea of the holy guardian angel, that you will go through this elaborate process, mostly of purifications, of prayers and supplications, and personal sacrifice, um, abstinence from um, sexual activity, abstinence from interacting with anyone really, uh, abstinence from certain foods, and just a lot of prayers and supplications and confessions and that sort of thing in order to try and achieve a certain level of purity. That's in this grimoire, this book of magic, to the point where you come into contact, direct communion with the holy guardian angel, with your personal holy guardian angel. And at that point, once you are in contact with your HGA, holy guardian angel, from that position of authority, of having contacted and being directly in contact with your HGA, then you call up all of the demons of hell, all of the kings and princes of hell, and all their legions of demons that are under them. As I said, in this particular book, in the way that that book is structured. And then you have all of those demons swear allegiance to you, um, and obedience. And in a way, if you look at that from a Jungian psychological perspective, yeah, Zink mentioned, didn't Crowley use that terminology, HGA? Yeah, absolutely. Aleister Crowley claimed to have performed the Abramelin operation, or the instructions found within that grimoire. and he claims to have achieved that successfully, but he didn't do it the way that it said in the book because you're supposed to do it completely isolated, and he was traveling around while he was doing it, and but anyways, whether he did or not, he claimed to have done it, and he utilized a lot of the symbolism and terminology that was found within that book to inform his philosophy and occult system and religion of Thelema going forward, which ended up influencing quite a few modern occultists after that point. So, yeah, absolutely. Where we get it from now, most people are, it's filtered through Crowley. But that's where Crowley got it, is from the Book of the Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage. And so it's an interesting read if you want to understand um, the source from which Crowley himself got it from. Then that's a good grimoire to read. And if you look at that whole Abramelin operation from a Jungian perspective, really what you're doing is you are figuring out a way in order to get all of the aspects of yourself aligned and obedient, you could say, in harmony with the highest conceivable aspect of yourself. So you try and get yourself to a point where you can connect with that highest aspect of the self that you can conceive of, that you could even potentially connect with. And then everything below that point, from that perspective, in terms of um, personas, you could say, or soul fragments, you could say, all of those different parts of the self, including the psychological shadow, the aspects of the self that are unintegrated, that have been fragmented off, that are disenfranchised parts of the self, denied parts of the self, traumatic complexes that are suppressed within the psyche. Um, there's another word that I was looking for, but it's not coming to me. But maybe it'll come to me later. But all of these different aspects of the self, all the parts that are within what Carl Jung referred to as the shadow, which is all the unintegrated parts of the self, rejected aspects of the self, that sort of thing. Those are the demons. Those are your own personal demons. And if you can get them to be aligned in obedience to yourself when you are in alignment with the most highest, purest aspect of yourself, then that is a way to achieve what Jung referred to as, what did he call that again? Um, Not integration, but individuation. That's the word I'm looking for. That's the word that Carl Jung used. And if you are aware of Martinist philosophy, um, the the philosophy taught by Martinez to Pasquale, um, and who was the other one? Um, Anyways, the philosophy that you'll find within the Martinist order, then you'll also understand the idea of reintegration. And that is a very similar thing as well. And so that Abramelin operation is an occult method of achieving that um, individuation that was spoken of by Carl Gustav Jung. Now, what if that same type of thing is what happened on the cross with Jesus? Now, we are told in Christianity that when Jesus was on the cross, he took on all of the sins of the world, right? And you could think of it like macrocosm, microcosm, as above, so below. As that which is above is like that which is below, and that which is below is like that which is above, etc. Right? From the Emerald Tablet, a Hermetic axiom. Now, what if that is a metaphor that he took on all the sins of the world, right? Well, what is the um, personification of all the sins of the world? Satan, right? Satan is the macrocosmic shadow in which all the sins of the world, all of the personal demons of all of humanity are, you could say, conglomerated under that idea of Satan, right? And so when Christ was on the cross and he took on all the sins of the world, that's him integrating his shadow. That's a symbol, it's a metaphor for integrating Satan, right? Accepting and absorbing Satan and integrating it in a harmonious way. Um, yeah, so that's that's him taking on his shadow, right? Because of course it's portrayed in this grandiose fashion, right? That it's a collective thing. But if you were to reinterpret it as a metaphor for a personal transformation rather than a collective one, well, what happens? He integrates his shadow, right? And if his shadow is portrayed symbolically by Satan, then Jesus and Satan become one. The two become one. They are not separated anymore. It's not a part of himself that's in conflict with himself anymore. It's not a part of himself that's trying to maintain a separation or suppress the other part, right? Um, okay. Zinc said Kabbalion. Well, Kabbalion is actually not Hermetic at all. It's New Thought. It's fraudulently described as valid Hermeticism. It's not Hermeticism. If you read the actual Corpus Hermeticum, the actual original historical texts of Hermetic philosophy, it doesn't really match with what you find in the Kabbalion. The Kabbalion claimed to be Hermetic teachings, but it really wasn't. It's still a very interesting book. and I think that it has a lot of value to it, but it's not what it portrays itself to be. It's new thought, which is very interesting and useful, but Kabbalion is not genuine Hermetic philosophy. It's, yeah, but it is very popular, and I'm not going to say that it's not useful. It's just not Hermetic as it claims to be. And it wasn't written by three adepts, it was written by one guy. Um, but yeah, so just like a Necronomicon, almost more fiction from the start. You could compare it to that. You could say, I really like the Necronomicon that is the common one that you find, which was edited and by Simon, the Simon Necronomicon, which is almost for sure is Peter Lavenda. I mean, he's admitted he claims that Simon is the name of a group of people and that he was one of the members of that group. And he claims that the Necronomicon that is commonly found in most bookstores, I think it was Avon Publishing in a paperback. He claims that it was a genuine manuscript of an ancient grimoire that he came into possession of at one point, and that they translated it. But I think it's probably more likely that he wrote it himself and just came up with that mythological or folkloric background story or origin story to give it more um, folkloric oomph, you could say, or to give it like more legitimacy. That, it's a very time honored tradition of ascribing um, authorship to some other more ancient and respected source, or that you found it. You discovered this ancient lost document, that sort of thing. It's been done a million times where people claim that, and really it's not. But I do really like the Necronomicon. I think that it's pretty cool. I don't think that it's perfect. I think that I would have written it a little differently, but I do think that it is interesting. It has a lot of cool concepts in there and some really interesting symbolism. But and I think it was quite well done. But I do have some issues with it. But all in all, I do like it. But yeah, you could say you could compare it to that, where the Kabbalion, it does have its merits. It does have some value to it, and it gives you some interesting concepts and ideas, but it isn't what it claims to be, you know? So yeah, in that sense, I do. You could compare it to that. Yeah, Donald Tyson wrote a Necronomicon as well, and I read the 13 Gates of the Necronomicon, but I didn't read his full on regular Necronomicon. But the 13 Gates of the Necronomicon was more of a reference book than a book. It was more of a reference to a 13 zodiac type system, really, which appreciate. I use 13 signs of the zodiac in my work, which the 13th one being Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer. Um, and we could get into that if we have time or not. But yeah, there's some interesting concepts there. But let's get back to the story of Jesus on the cross, and when he. Okay, so here's the other connection. What is the holy guardian angel? Traditionally, the guardian angel is something that you aren't usually typically aware of in most circumstances. If you think of the guardian angel, right? Even in the Abramelin grimoire, it's not something that you typically are in contact with or aware of. You have to go through some extraordinary processes in order to get in contact with that. And um, so the holy guardian angel or the guardian angel is this entity that usually you're not aware of, and it protects you from dangers that you aren't even necessarily even aware of as well. Now, if we compare that to the psychological shadow as spoken of by Jung, that's a very similar thing. The shadow is a suppressed part of ourselves, which means it's not something that we are typically aware of. If we do start to come into awareness of it, it there's a fear response where we flee from it because it's protecting us, it's protecting our psyche from ideas, concepts, traumas that we aren't ready to accept, or at least we weren't ready to accept it or process it, or weren't capable of processing it at the initial point when we originally had come into contact with it. We didn't have the mental and emotional faculties to process that information. And so it becomes almost like a trauma, and it gets suppressed, it gets pushed down in the consciousness and isolated from our main sense of identity, our main sense of ego, of self. We reject these parts of ourselves. We say, that's not, I'm not that. That's not me. And anytime it starts to bubble up to the surface, we push it down. Sometimes it overtakes us, it bubbles over, and we are overtaken by these parts of ourselves that we try and deny, and it takes over. And then afterwards, we're like, I don't know what happened. I wasn't myself, you know? Yeah, you were, but you were overtaken by a part that you have been denying, and it comes out usually in very unhealthy ways when it finally bubbles over from the pressure release of it coming out, and it usually comes out in very unhealthy ways, and we end up feeling ashamed and guilty and that sort of thing. But if we can gradually learn to pluck these things out of the shadow and look them right in the eye. You know, the thing is, as adults, we probably do have the mental and emotional faculties to actually process and understand and integrate these parts of ourselves. But because that initial point of where we became aware of it, we weren't capable of it, it gets pushed down, and then it stays there unexamined, and then it grows twisted in the dark of our own psychological shadow, and then, as I said, comes out in unhealthy ways. And these processes that you find often in various different forms of esoteric practice, such as in the Abramelin book, the Abramelin grimoire, or in Jungian psychology, or in a lot of different, there's a lot of different like forms of alchemy. For example, shadow work. You hear about shadow work, shamanic soul retrieval. You have all these different methods of delving into the psychological shadow, that dark part of ourselves, and healing those damaged parts of the self and recovering it and reintegrating it in a healthy, harmonious way into the psyche. So then it's not part of the shadow anymore. And it can be very cathartic, this process. And it can free up a lot of energy because it takes a lot of energy to keep it suppressed. And we have all these workarounds to try and avoid touching those areas of our psyche because we don't want to confront those parts of ourselves. It's scary, it's icky, you know? And imagine the story of Jesus on the cross as a metaphor for that process, that personal transformation when you do accept the shadow, the parts of yourself that have been rejected and suppressed. When you do accept it, and you can feel there's a catharsis there, right? And now the thing is, when you've integrated the shadow, that's you don't need the guardian angel anymore because it's not protecting you from those shadow aspects because you've integrated it. And so that's why Jesus calls out, "Why have you forsaken me?" Because in that moment, when he's accepting the shadow, he doesn't have that holy guardian angel anymore. He has become it. It has he's absorbed it in a sense, and he doesn't have this sense of some external thing that's protecting him. It's him, you know. And then he dies on the cross and he goes to hell because he has absorbed Satan, essentially. He has taken on the sins of the world. And he goes down into hell, into the pit of darkness. You know, he goes fully into the shadow. And they say he goes there for 3 days. And in esoteric Christianity and Gnostic folklore and that sort of thing, they mention that he has the opportunity to um, gather up, you could say, the souls that the righteous souls that went there because they didn't have a chance to accept Jesus before that point. But that's that's actually the mainstream concept of it. And in the more esoteric version of that, he goes down there and he is basically integrating the shadow. It's a personal process of transformation, expressed symbolically as a collective macrocosmic story, right? And by the way, the story in Revelation, the book of the Apocalypse of St. John the Divine is another name for it. That is a story of transformation that's occurring on a collective level, but it's a metaphor for your own internal transformation as well. So we could do another video on that, but um, Jesus goes into hell. Um, in it does a full integration of the shadow aspects while he's there, and then arises and is resurrected. And this is a process of alchemy. In alchemy, you take the starting material, you break it down into a chaos of its component parts, the soul fragments, and then individually, each of those components is refined, healed, and then they're all reintegrated back together. And there's a resurrection of that original starting material, but it's transformed now. You take earth, you break it down into the principal elements: water, fire, air. Water separated out, air is separated out, fire is separated out, and each of those three main components are refined and healed and then recombined to create a resurrected earth, which is so transformed, it's so different from the original earth that it's referred to as the fifth element. Earth is the fourth element because it's a composite of those three principal elements of water, fire, and air. They combine in its natural form to create earth, the fourth element. You break it apart, refine each one separately, and then recombine them to resurrect that earth. But because it's so transformed, it's referred to as the fifth element or quintessence. And this is the resurrected Christ. He is so transformed that people don't even recognize him in the story. It's an alchemical parable. And those who understand alchemy, who look at these things from a Gnostic perspective, can recognize the symbolism of this story and can apply it on a personal level. But the thing is, it got twisted into this idea of this collective thing where individuals set themselves up as the sole intercessors between spirit and between the divine and the rest of humanity, these priests, where they become the authority figures and you have to go through these intercessors, these priests, and then they manage to have the power. Whereas this is a process that each individual can do for themselves. Um, it can be useful to have guidance, but it's not an authority figure that is required. And people have been burned in history at the stake or executed for saying such things as I'm saying right now, for saying that you don't need the church, that you don't need authority figures such as priests or bishops or that whole hierarchical structure, um, that you can connect with spirit, that you can undergo an alchemical transformation, a transmutation, without some external figure giving you permission, without some external figure waving their hands and saying, I've got the apostolic authority to do these things, to administer these sacraments and such. Um, you don't need those priests. You can do it yourself. You can achieve your own alchemical transformation, and you can turn lead into gold yourself. You can turn the lead of your unrefined self into the fully integrated, what I like to call the complete harmonious self. And what Jung referred to as the individuated self, or individual, a person who has undergone individuation, or we could say a Taoist immortal. You can do these things for yourself. Um, yeah, so that we can go into more in depth. And also, so then not only at that point, Jesus, when he's resurrected, then he goes and gives knowledge to his followers, to his crew, to the people that had been he had been working with, and teaching them what he knew. He shared that knowledge. In a sense, he becomes a light bearer, a Lucifer. And if you look at the Latin Vulgate edition of the Bible, if you look at the second epistle of Peter, chapter 1, verse 19, you'll see that Jesus is referred to with the word Lucifer in that passage. Lucifer appears in that passage, and it's a reference to Jesus. Also, in Revelation, Jesus refers to himself as the morning star, the bright morning star. Um, the morning star is what the Romans used the Latin word to refer to as the Latin word that the Romans used for the morning star was Lucifer, because it was a bringer of light. It was a herald of the dawn, the calling forth the light of day, and light being a symbol of knowledge and awareness. It's a symbol of bringing forth or sharing the light with others. And the rooster is also a symbol that is very much in resonance with the morning star, Lucifer. And it's interesting because you see that come up in the story of Jesus as well, that Peter ends up having an epiphany. He ends up gaining awareness, self awareness, when a rooster crows 3 times, which Jesus told him that he would achieve a certain level of awareness, of self awareness of himself, of part of himself that he wasn't proud of a shadow aspect of himself. And yeah, so Simon Peter denies Jesus 3 times. Exactly, Ruth. Before the before the cock crows, before he hears a rooster cockadoodle doing, you know, 3 times, and then when he hears that, he realizes the light of day dawns, in a sense, metaphorically, um, and he becomes aware of part of himself that he's not proud of, and he can then confront that part of himself and heal himself in that sense. So it's also a symbol of enlightenment, of awareness in above the Oracle of Delphi. When you would enter into that temple, above the entryway, it said, "Know thyself." And that form of enlightenment is self knowledge, that achieving that knowledge of the self, that um, integration of the shadow is the main part, because what part of yourself are you is hidden from you. It's what's in the shadow. Okay, so I feel like I've kind of I'm beating a dead horse now, maybe. But I really wanted you guys to understand, I wanted all of you to understand this concept of the shadow, and how we can read into scriptures and mythologies of various different religions that are out there. And we can recognize the symbolic meaning and apply it in our own lives to our own individual transformational journey. And that even in the Christian scriptures, there is a lot of wisdom there that we can learn from, as long as we're not. The thing is, where people go wrong is when they're looking at this and taking it literally, and they are turning it into a religion that they have to be obedient, and they have to follow all these rules and these authority figures and these hierarchical systems of power that don't let you question things. And if you ask questions, then you are sinning. You are being sinful by asking questions instead of just believing without any kind of um, they want you to be unquestioningly faithful to the rules that they've established, that they've set up, because it benefits them. It keeps them in power. The church has lost a lot of power since its peak, but it still holds a lot of influence in this world today. And rightfully, people who have escaped the system of indoctrination, which is mainstream Christianity, are rightfully, I can understand why you would throw that whole thing out. You'd be like, I don't want to get involved with any of that stuff. I don't want to look at the scriptures or any of that stuff. But the thing is, there's a lot of esoteric wisdom within that if you can get past the idea of it being utilized by these mainstream institutions that have twisted this knowledge in order to establish power structures and hierarchies and systems of indoctrination. If you can break through, one of the ways you can break through from that is by recognizing the symbolic meaning behind it, because it has the seeds of its own destruction within it. Basically, these systems of power can be disarmed when you understand the esoteric meaning behind these scriptures and not just take their word for what it means. Because they're going to tell you an interpretation which suits them, which allows them to maintain power, and it allows them to control your mind rather than you thinking for yourself, rather than you achieving your own personal transformation and your own direct connection with spirit, with yourself, with the deeper aspects of yourself. They don't want you to explore your own shadow because they know that it'll empower you. They know that it will free you from the bonds of the power structure that they've set up, and they want to maintain their power. So I hope you gain something from this. Um, if you are interested in learning more, I have over 300 videos on my channel that explore esoteric topics, esoteric wisdom, occult philosophy, occult practice, and it's all free. Now, if you want to take it to the next level, you can join me and in participation in a more exclusive community of dedicated occultists and esotericists who are exploring these ideas in a very practical way together and supporting one another. And this is under the auspices of the Novus Ordo Luciferi. an esoteric order that where you can learn Luciferian alchemy, Gnostic Luciferian alchemy. And this includes such practices as advanced lucid dreaming, astral projection, divination systems such as the tarot, as the I Ching, um, uh, methods of achieving altered states of consciousness, such as self hypnosis, energy work that involves internal alchemy, similar to what you might experience if you studied Taoist internal alchemy, Western Hermetic alchemy, including lab work, the plant, working with plants, spagyrics, it's sometimes referred to as, how to make, how to actually craft a quintessence in substance form in a lab from plant matter, which not only teaches you the principles of alchemy in a very tangible way, but also produces substances which can be utilized in your esoteric work. Um, a new Luciferian era calendar, and we are actually coming close to the end of year 12 of the new Luciferian era, and soon it will be year 13 in the new Luciferian era. And this calendar, you can learn about that if you participate in the Novus Ordo Luciferi as well. There's public information about it as well, but there's some really in depth workshops on how to utilize the NLE calendar. We have manifestation magic or money magic, which allows you to understand how to utilize esoteric principles in order to gain an edge in achieving whatever you're trying to achieve, whatever goals you may have, which also allows you to recruit more parts of yourself, a greater number of parts of yourself, and put them into alignment and working toward that common goal to achieve. If you can achieve that complete harmonized self, then more aspects of yourself can be applied to achieving a goal. Blylism gave a super chat. Thank you very much. I really appreciate the support, Blyle. Um, that really makes a big difference. Any financial contribution that gets made through the super chats is a big help. Um, if you want to participate in the Novus Ordo Luciferi, there is a link in the description uh, that goes to the website, and there's a course catalog which has all of the courses that I'd mentioned before, and more. There is over 40 hours of recorded video lessons that are embedded in the course modules of a full learning platform on the Novus Ordo Luciferi website that you get access to if you join the Patreon, the NOL or Novus Ordo Luciferi Patreon at the Torchbearer tier or above, which is only $5 USD per month. If you join that tier, it'll unlock all of those courses on the NOL website, as well as all of the written documents, which include teachings, it includes practices, ritual scripts, energy work, mental disciplines, instructions for how to develop different types of mental discipline, um, divinations, examples, full examples of divinations of different styles, including tarot readings, dice, throwing the bones, I Ching, full walkthroughs of how to do an I Ching reading, for example. All of that gets unlocked, and you get unlimited access to it right off the bat. There's no levels of authority degrees. There are degrees, but it doesn't limit. It's just a suggest. It's essentially a suggested sequence of approach for all the material, but you get access to all of the material up front, and you can go through it in your own order or your own sequence. But if you want more guidance on how to go through it in a more logical progression, then you can go through it in the system of degrees if you want. But it's not, in most esoteric orders, you get access to your first degree material. You have to master that and get permission from some authority figure to advance to the next degree, and then you'll get that next parcel of information, those next parcels of teachings and practices, and then so on. You got to get permission at each step of the way to get access to the next bit or the next chunk of knowledge or practices. But in the NOL, in the Novus Ordo Lucifera, you get access to all of it. The full corpus of inner teachings are available to you immediately, and it's not put behind um, outrageous paywalls or hierarchical authority permissions. It's just $5 USD for a full month of unlimited access. And if you want to continue participating, then you just continue with the subscription ongoing as long as you feel like you want to participate. And we also have private members' meetings on a regular basis. Some of them are held within the Discord server. Those are at this point, we have them regularly every single Thursday evening in the voice channel, which you can do video as well, video/voice channel on the Discord server that is available to members. And we also have additional meetings and hangouts. Some of them are formal lessons, which are recorded and then turned into courses as well. Tonight, after this meeting, or sorry, after this live stream, there will be a private hangout for members of the Novus Ordo Luciferi. And if you want to jump on that, which is going to start in just a couple minutes, I like to start it at 11:11 p.m. Eastern Time. Right now it's 11:09, so in just 2 minutes from now, we'll be having our private hangout, our private online meeting, where you can turn on your camera, your mic, and we can have a conversation with anybody who happens to show up who's a member. And if you want to join that, go to the Patreon, which is in the description of this video, and sign up to the $5 per month tier or above, and then you'll unlock a post. It's the second most recent post on the Patreon right now, and it will have a link to the meeting for tonight. And so if you can unlock that right now by joining the Patreon, you'll get access to that meeting link, and you can join us tonight. And you can meet other members around the world. We have members around the world, and we are starting to establish local branches around the world as well. Um, Two of them in Ontario, Canada. There's one that's starting up in Texas. That there's been a bunch of members in Texas, USA, that I've been coordinating to get something going there. A bunch of different places are looking at starting something. Europe, um, So yeah, if you're interested in participating in that, it's super easy. Um, as a light bearer, as a Luciferian, I want to make this knowledge accessible, but there has to be some sort of symbol of dedication. That $5 token amount is that symbol of your dedication to the practices, that you are serious about this. And um, and then you can access the material, you can access the community. And as I said, we're going to have a meeting this evening, and you can jump on that and participate as well tonight if you want, if you so are inclined. And I hope to see you there. Anybody who is already a member, hopefully you'll have a chance to pop in. Anybody who decides they want to participate, you can participate tonight. If you are interested, just join the Patreon. You'll unlock that post and click that link, and we'll see you there tonight. And until next time, everyone, stay lucid.